Well. The Rugby World Cup has had its first major shock, and it was Los Teros, Uruguay.
Yeah.
A huge win over Fiji, 30 points to 27. We didn't see it coming.
Nope.
We didn't see any bit of it coming. We hadn't seen Uruguay. I think we were saying they were going to be shocked. They weren't shocked.
No, they were not.
They weren't shocked. We were shocked. The rugby world was shocked by Los Teros. An awesome performance, an awesome win. And it just colours this pool magnificently. Pool D, the greatest World Cup pool of all time, I think it's fair to say. 5 very competent teams. And doing a job over sort of the All Blacks of Tier 2 rugby, Fiji.
Yeah.
They kept their composure. They were slick. They were focused, and they waited for the Fijian errors, which came more often than not.
There was a sea of them that they were there able to capitalise on.
Yeah, but they never sort of bought in. They never gave up. They consistently, from a defensive point of view, held their line, made their good reads, and just made it as difficult as possible for Fiji to execute. And Fiji couldn't execute. Uruguay, I mean, man. We're in our colours today, but we did not see this coming. Partly just because you don't get to see enough of them. I mean, we watched obviously the Americas Rugby Championship earlier in the season,
and they impressed me. And they were lovely. We were noting. The main takeaway was that they play a little bit like Argentina. They're very fast. They're very wide. They can attack.
Did for the US, obviously did for Canada in qualifying home and away, and were very good for both of those wins. Were considerably better than Canada.
For sure.
But the lingering narrative out of there seemed to be Canada's woes rather than Uruguay's pros. But they've been working away quietly in the background. They have had a huge weight into their beginning of the tournament, and it was something of a coaching sort of drive-by shooting on Fiji. I think they fancied it.
Yeah.
They fancied just let's keep our defensive shape, and you could see it right through the whole match. Even when Fiji scored an early score, they just knew that they could count on the looseness of Fiji. If they can pounce on breaking balls, if they can sit back and make tackles and just make it difficult for them, there's every chance that they are going to panic. There's every chance that they are going to lose composure, especially without their front runners on the field.
Well, this was it. Yeah, the rotation, squad rotation is something you kind of feel you have to do, especially with these quick turnarounds. You want to trust your squad, but boy oh boy, it didn't. It was night and day. The Fiji performance from last week against Australia versus this one here they were so rudderless and leaderless. There was no kicking game. Like they did lack for a volley on the pitch, but a few of their players, like Gonava on the wing, was awful. I thought Nakarawa at number 8 just didn't work. He's just not a number 8, and he played particularly well anyway. In the loose.
Definitely thought that was a big factor. Was that just the leaders, Nakarawa being one of the leaders on the pitch, and Matavesi coming in at 10, trying to be a leader. Those guys didn't really show. They were too loose. There were a number of consistent patterns in this match, which, by the way, was just a fantastic game of rugby. I watched it back. Was trying to take notes while watching it back, and literally it's impossible to do. You can't type as fast as the play in that game was going. Every time the ball went dead, it was straight in, and something else was happening. It was incredibly intense and incredibly quick, and the Uruguayans are comfortable playing at that speed. They weren't shocked by the pace. They thrived in it, where Fiji weren't thriving in it, because they were consistently trying to manufacture an even greater pace to try and catch these guys, and were just confusing themselves. And that's where the leaders of the pitch didn't come into the fray. I mean, if they'd sat down and focused a little bit, they could have realised, we actually have the edge here up front, let's tighten it up. If they had any of that game to them at all,
well, they did for the first 5 minutes after half time. They went to that area and tried to settle things down by going tight again, but then they backed that up in the same sequence, even with crazy offload that meant the play was breaking down, and they really didn't get a hold on the game at all. Whereas the Uruguayans were in it from minute 1. They kind of set the pace really themselves, and were, like you say, comfortable in it, and they were responding to, like, Fiji felt like they'd score a try, maybe settle down, maybe try and get out, but they wouldn't exit. Or Uruguay would be straight back on them and grab a try straight away.
It was all built on the defensive pressure that didn't allow the Fijian offense to click, and not even a pressure from a rush defense, just pressure from keeping your width and making your tackles and not making it easy for Fiji. And actually Fiji would have been better off keeping it tight, but then from that, chances started to develop. Loose balls were thrown, and the clinical nature of these Uruguayan backs was awesome. It really was.
They were well capable of grabbing the tries when they came their way.
Absolutely, yeah.
That little errata scampering away for the first one was great fun. It did come off a loose offload from Nakarawa in their own territory in the middle of the field, which is nuts. But then just the wherewithal. I think it was the number 2 who the name is escaping me now, Kessler. pounced on it and got it up to Arata, and in he scampered, which is great to see. I love little scrummy tries like that, rewarding industry.
He just kept going, kept stepping. They have sublime technique in that back line. They're not guys we have a huge amount of tape on. We have some tape on them, but we knew they had some techers in that back line, and to see them come in and not be shocked by the pace of the game or the physicality of the game, but to thrive in it was just an awesome thing. Awesome for World Rugby to have a pool where there is no whipping boy, where all the teams are in the mix. Certainly there probably is that gap between tier 1 and tier 2, but you did see Fiji mix it with Australia, and you may yet see Georgia, or even, who knows, Uruguay get a few plays off against a tier 1 side.
And if Uruguay now can put Georgia away, albeit they have a short turnaround in it, but if they can manage to do that, then they'll secure third place, which is automatic qualification, which is something that often goes overlooked when you're talking about the tournament from a point of view of who's contenders to win it and who's qualifying from the pool. But third place is very, very significant to these tier 2 teams, and now Uruguay have put themselves in a great position to go for it.
Absolutely, and it's not just automatic qualification, it's seeding for the next World Cup. To be a third seeded side really does knock you up a couple of rungs pretty quickly, because then you're all of a sudden favourites to secure that place the next time. So and you avoid the likes of Fiji in the next tournament. Obviously though, not this time because it would knock Fiji down. But it's great to see that level of competitiveness, and there were a few lessons in there for Fiji. The capacity to have flair and be clinical, but also be well coached and focused. I mean, we love John McKee, but man oh man, was a job done on him today by the Uruguayan coach.
Esteban Mireras, I believe.
I'm not familiar with him, but he had his homework done. But one of the aspects was man of the match, Felipe Berchesi, the out half for Uruguay. This guy is, hand on heart, not a guy I was familiar with prior to this match, but what a sensational performance. I'm really excited to see what he does next. Clinical kicking game, and just a lesson in terms of the value that being able to take kicks gives. I mean, we are lovers of going for the try in this game, but you have to be able to take kicks. The points are so valuable. How many points
did both tens leave out there for Fiji as well? When you get to a game like this, when you lose by 3, that's when you're going, wow, the kicking made a difference. The kicking makes a difference, but also the sheer physicality of the bloke, Berchesi, some of the tackles he made. There was a crucial one with less than 10 to go, and Fiji were trying to break out, having just scored to make it a 1-score game. And Semi Radradra, who has been smashing all of Europe to pieces in club footy for the last number of years. And to be fair, even in this performance, he was going pretty solidly from 13, and they moved him out to the wing, and he was still alright. But not in this instance. He came out worse.
Berchesi bundles him into touch, makes that winning play, and those are the intangibles. Those are the huge moments that underdogs have in these big upsets more often than not, that get the fans into the game. It is that passionate intangible of just giving yourself that extra something, and they had so much of it in terms of defensive hustle. It was sensational. They are in there. They are another team that everybody had been overlooking, that are in there, that belong in the mix of this ever more exciting, ever more interesting tier 2 story. It has me buzzing and very excited to see it. They're an awesome team. I shout out to the captain, Juan Manuel Gaminara, for his very passionate post-match interview. And in general, the post-match scenes were extraordinary.
Awesome.
It was,
and the pre-match, it was apt as well. Like the stadium in question was at
Kamaishi
Recovery Memorial Stadium, which it's a lovely little ground. They're surrounded. The environs. I was watching it with our sister Kieran. We were noting it's just like it's a beautiful part of the world. Like looking over the stadium looks amazing. And obviously the story with the tsunami, it's all been rebuilt in the last couple of years. So there was some Japanese royalty there as well. So it's just a very special day, all things considered. And great for Uruguay to get that result, and it's great for the World Cup as well to have results like this coming out. And we were right to flag Pool D as a potential goer. I know the people were talking.
And we had overlooked. We are so fond in our tier 2 appraisal of Georgia and Fiji as 2 prime candidates to make the step up into tier 1. Now neither of them are there yet, and I think results both prior and probably subsequent to this video will show that. But they are 2 who are primed to make that jump. That we had sort of been overlooking Uruguay, and if Uruguay had been in a different pool, we would have said, say for example Italy's pool, maybe Uruguay can mix this up. But because they were in this pool, we just assumed too many tough teams, they're just going to be shocked by the physicality. But they weren't coming here to lie down. They had their plans. Fiji on their first game, them coming in with all the time in the world to prepare. a 3-day turnaround for Fiji after an Australian game that they were targeting,
and that they lost like Seattle in. They were vulnerable, and they were picked apart by a very, very clinical, very well coached and very well driven Uruguay team. Yeah. And they do fit into our bracket about these tier 2 teams where if you're playing attacking brand, if you play wide and try to grab tries, you give yourself the best chance.
If you're clinical, if when offered tries you can take them, it does give you a greater opportunity to win these games. Yeah. But shout out their defense, because it's their defense that won this game
for sure. Yeah. But at the same time, score 30 points. If they can do that, that'll be more than enough for Georgia. Probably, if they can manage that.
Probably,
but, it could be more than enough for the other two as well. It's easier said than done, but they're off to a winning start, and fair play to them.
From Fiji's perspective, not to dampen the mood too much, but we are fans of Fiji, and this is their World Cup over.
It is,
and I mean, they'll play their 2 games. They still are probably maybe just favourites to sneak that 3rd place spot.
Yeah, those two bonus points, and then Uruguay didn't actually secure. They got 3 tries rather than which we saw with Japan.
It won't matter if Uruguay beat Georgia. It won't matter. Mm-hmm. But if they lose to Georgia, then all of a sudden Fiji become your front runners again to secure that 3rd place. But they were a team with quarterfinals on mind. They 100% overlooked this game. They have been whinging since about the 3-day turnaround. It's not that they don't have a point, but it's that if you really want to be a top side, if you really want to make a quarterfinal, you've got to have a bit of street smarts to you. First of all, you can't have your leaders on any of your team that you select be floundering to the degree that they were floundering, throwing mad offloads, giving the ball away.
I think it was 21 or 22 handling errors by the end as well. You can't have that.
And then that doesn't even count the ones that go backwards.
No, exactly.
And there were so many that were just thrown away. So there was that kind of just complete lack of just minding the ball and being sensible, along with picking a guy at the halfbacks. Henry Signoli had a shocker, and maybe you couldn't have seen that coming. But Josh Matavesi isn't and has never been a 10. And if you go with only 1 10 and then as a backup a guy who isn't a 10, these are the kind of things that can happen, and that's one thing that no tier 2 side has done or is doing. No tier 1 side, has done or is doing.
Yes,
and that's probably a part of the reason why they're not quite at the level.
These 3 and 4 day turnarounds are obviously cruel, and particularly for tier 2 sides feel a bit punitive. But it's not like the tier 1 sides have short turnarounds too, but the difference is that you can rotate the squad. You need have 2 or 3 viable 10s that can run a game for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. Like these kinds of games reveal the gulf between tier 1 and tier 2, and then you can see that in tier 2 maybe sometimes they do have a very competent first 15, but it's whether that 31 is up to standard or not, and can they manage to rotate people in and keep that continuity and keep a cohesive game plan, because it was night and day compared to looking at them in that first half against Australia compared to them here. It was nuts.
And listen, there are broader concepts conversations to be had around this Fiji side, not least of which that second Uruguayan try was really soft around the fringes, and you wonder, would that have happened had they not had to cut their very successful defensive coach a couple of months before the World Cup.
Sure, that's maybe a point. Yeah,
but for the time being, the story is Los Teros. The story is Uruguay, and we have some updating to do, because we did a preview in our podcast, which has been released now, of the Georgia-Uruguay game, and we were
bemoaning the fact that we had no tape.
We had no tape on Uruguay, and we spent all of it talking about our beloved Georgia, who we do still hold very dear to our hearts, or at least I do. Yeah. And yet we did overlook this Uruguayan side, and this game becomes just so much more interesting this Saturday.
And I say it's Uruguay's turn to suffer the toll of the turnaround, because that game happens on Sunday.
Yes.
So that's a very, very quick turnaround from what is
Wednesday to Thursday.
Also what is their biggest win of their history, and what an emotional high to come back down from and train and hit up, and then
I dare say there were good points had as well.
One worrying sign was that Fiji's scrum were getting on top of them. Fiji's tie 5 were getting on top of them, and which Fiji's Georgia.
Scotty Seo demolished Fiji's scrum, and I think Scotty Seo is kind of worried about what the Georgian scrum might bring.
Yeah.
And the Fiji scrum, demolished by him, demolished the Uruguayan scrum. So that there are a fair few runs below. Georgia are a different challenge to Fiji. Yeah. Like the way that they were just soaking those tackles and waiting for errors. It is true that Georgia at times knocked the ball on, but they won't be as kind to the Uruguayans.
No, even when they knock the ball on, that means you're scrumming them.
Yeah,
the pace of the game will be different.
Yeah, and Uruguay, that's the thing. They're going to be if Georgia can control the pace of that game and get on top of them and hold that ball in Uruguay's half, chances are they won't drop it. Certainly that surprise factor of, oh shit, Uruguay can play ball, is gone. The Georgians will be on high alert. I think for all of these sides, this Uruguayan results, even for Georgia, especially after what happened against Wales, it does sort of move any quarter-final aspirations firmly to the back of the mind, and it's becoming a right scramble for this
scrap for third place, and that's wonderful. That's what we do aspire for all groups in the future of the World Cup to be like this. To have these dynamics,
absolutely,
and not have the likes of Canada not being able to string anything together in other pools where it's just really is making up the numbers.
Yes, absolutely.
But Uruguay have been fantastic. If they can set their pace, if they can attack out wide and score some tries, if they can grab a lead against this Georgia team.
Georgia don't love chasing games.
They don't love
chasing
games.
One of the things that they did consistently is used their blindside winger in their offensive moves. Now, sometimes he came in off 12, sometimes he was the outside shoulder of 10, sometimes he was the inside shoulder.
The first move of the game, that first set piece.
Outside shoulder of 10, he did drop the pill,
unfortunately.
But they did make a big break later on, which led to a 3-pointer on the inside shoulder of 10, using, I think, the right winger on that occasion. But that is an area that Georgia have struggled to defend, both against Scotland, in both games against Scotland, and most certainly against Wales in midweek.
Yes,
those are the kind of strike moves that you've got to think Uruguay are going to be looking at, getting those wingers off their wings, disguising them a little bit, even not off first phase, because obviously Georgia, you would imagine at this stage, will get that right.
You hope so, but they were
off the multi-phase, like a few phases in, we can roll a winger off the blindside wing. That's where you might be likely to catch them and get some points. And to be fair to the Uruguayans, based on what we saw in this game, they are clinical. When they get line breaks, they'll take them.
Points.
So absolutely, this has the potential to be a ripper.
A proper tier 2 tussle, and with real permutations, because both of these sides, third place would be huge for them, and they really, really do want that. And Georgia obviously off to a losing start against Wales, which was never a game they were targeting to win anyway.
The
manner of it was very disappointing. And now with Uruguay buoyed by this success, it becomes a very slippery old pool very suddenly for a tier 2 side.
Very, very interesting. We do still love Georgia, but we now do have a special place in our heart as well for Los Teros.
Yes,
they have won me over. They have
coloured the World Cup versus Los Leilos. So Leilos Los Teros.
Leilos Los Teros.
This is good.
And, we're hoping for a ripper of a game on Sunday morning to wake us all up before the big one between Australia and Wales. But it's going to be awesome. Much respect and much love to both sides. A first real shock. And what a side to deliver it. Truly shocking, but truly wonderful as well. And a wonderful another nation to welcome with open arms into the wider rugby community is just an awesome thing. And one of the great aspects of the World Cups in general, is bringing more nations into the game.
That's 100% right.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Look, vamos Los Teros.
Vamos Los Teros. Listen, that was a rather long one, but I think they deserve it. And we'll wrap it up there. Take care, guys, and we'll see you on next week's main podcast after the dramatic game between Australia Wales. See you guys.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you're new here, please click subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified of all our new videos. And leave a comment as well, because we love the chat and conversation. Thanks.